Yeah, Chuck, and getting into that game, man, like two goals in the first 5 minutes. Like two goals in the first 5 minutes and 70 seconds, I believe, between the two goals by Orel. Because it feels as if the stadium was still celebrating. And then, like, I'm trying to get my phone out because I'm trying to record something. And then next thing I know, Rele is once again through and goal. And all I see is him slotting that ball beyond Rodman. And at that point, I knew it was going to be a mountain to climb. Sundowns haven't fallen to two goals behind the entirety of the season, so they've never had to come back from two goals down. I believe the only other time they've conceded two goals was in the game against Iskukun, and they won that one 4-2. And they were always in the lead in that one, or rather, they did not go behind in that game. And the way that Paris came out with the setup with the three centre backs, the quote unquote five at the back when they are out of possession, it worked perfectly into their hands because of those early goals, and Pirates could sit back and just absorb pressure and just defend. And they defended with aplomb. You know, my man of the match was Maketlen Makaula. That man is a workhorse. He just goes sideline to sideline. He shields that the back five in this case. He's pressing in midfield, going towards the balls. He's always dueling. He's always in a fight, and he's always come out on top in those fights. And as well as Umbogazi on the other side. But I want to focus in maybe on Sundowns. I was disappointed. Sundowns had a lot of possession, but they didn't do much of the possession. I kept on counting to you because we were in the stadium, right? That this is the third time or the fourth time, the fifth time that Ronan Williams is making a save. Pirates are getting shots on target. Sundowns have all the possession, but they're not making chain work, you know? And it was repetitive in terms of the continued go to the right hand side. You've got Umudao and Ribeiro who are doubling up on that side, who are looking to cause an overload, but it wasn't working because again, with the numbers that Pirates had in the defensive line, there was always the left back Uhoto, and there was always Umbogazi, who was hell bent on going into that game and coming out with yet another victory. That boy, that young man, I should call him, because yes, he's quite developed at his age, physically and also in terms of his game. Just is he has the right kind of mindset when it comes to like defenders, and Ribeiro felt it. You know, Mudau felt it. Although Mudau did come away with the goal in that second half to make it more interesting, they couldn't quite penetrate Orlando Pirates. And my great disappointment was the fact that it was continuously the same thing. And Coach Rivero spoke about this, that we kept on seeing the same thing and we handled it well. So I was happy about that. And Sundowns never really went to a plan B. Yes, tried to do something different with the subs. I thought Sellers was required, and I thought Sellers was good in trying to shift those centre backs out of position. I didn't see Ukoki have to do much in that game. I didn't see him or Sbisi have to turn and run. And I didn't see the game plan we've seen from Sundowns and Cardoso most recently, as well as what we saw in the game against Pirates. And I thought that Cardoso overthought himself because he was expecting that Pirates would have a reaction. The reaction came in terms of the formation, but there were the points in that game where Pirates still were defending a little high. And I was looking for the balls over the top. You know, where are the balls behind the defensive line? Yes, there are three centre backs, but even that being the case, there's still room to play it in behind them. At least try them. I didn't even see Sundowns attempt those balls. Not from the goalkeeper, who was able to hit those long balls. Not from the centre backs, especially Suarez, who has been adept at hitting the diagonals and the balls behind the defensive line. And nothing, not even from Umkwena. So Umkwena maybe attempt once or twice, but that was in the opposition half. And yeah, in that kind of sequence, it was congested, so there was not much you could expect in terms of getting purchase from that tactic. But I didn't see it, and I also didn't see like a Ribeiro being moved to the left hand side. Have him go at Dino as well as Koki, because I think that was maybe the weaker of the two wings defensively for Pirates. But we didn't see that much, you know. And then, as I'm saying, on the Pirate side, most impressed, as I did say, Umbogazi, Makaula especially, and one assist as well. He was trouble. And the way Rivero used him, that he wasn't central and he was pulling out to the side. He pulled that the center back Suarez, especially for the first goal. You see Suarez slipping and Mahopa through and providing then what turned out to be the assist, and with Umudiba like high up in on the pitch on his side, there was a lot of space for Mahopa to exploit, and I think he did great in that. Orele, as I'm saying, we didn't see him after the 2 goals much, but one of the thing that stood out for me with those goals, we've been speaking about him playing as the number 10 with Tito out, and maybe this is where he ends up playing and how he's continuing to grow in that position. One of the great things you get from Rele playing in the number 10 is the fact that he does become a second striker, whether he's running into the box, finishing the first goal, or with his technique, picking it up on the edge of the box in the central area, and then he's scoring again. But overall, Sundowns had a lot of the game, and I saw the criticism that Pirates only came to FNB to defend, and you can say that, but defense is part of the game. I always say I've got no issue with the team coming out with the result if their game plan was defensive, but then you still get the result. And Pirates got themselves back into the title race. Maybe there's a miracle that they might pull off, but we'll see about that.
If they pull this off, it's the greatest league victory ever. I don't want to hear anything from anyone about anything. This is the greatest one ever if they pull it off. But obviously, there are games in hand that they need to win. Jay, this season, Sundowns has let teams play. And by that, I mean, I don't necessarily see... It was a surprise at the time when Polokwane City won. It was a surprise at the time when he won the second game. TS Galaxy won as well. But when you look at Sundowns, they give you spaces to play. And if you think about the iterations of Sundowns, that with Rulani was more control and they didn't play wide too very, very often. He was very compact. Then you've got Mangoba, who did use his wingers and he did play those crosses. And what we said about Okados is that this team is able to adapt and they play more direct, which we didn't see when you got to FNB Stadium in terms of where is the direct play, because that's what was needed. Because if you think about the goals, I don't know which goal, the goal against Chiefs, where we loaded Reyners having pulled the defenders wide, and then Ribeiro making the second run to latch onto the cross by
Reyners.
Thank you. That suggests that you guys can play the ball over the top. You guys can play more directly when the game requires it, because that was the only goal of the game. They needed to abandon their ideas of controlling the game and playing short triangles. They had to go long, and it worked. But on that day, they didn't look for that, and I don't know why. And I mean, first goal, you can then say they were caught cold turkey. Second goal, you're like, but guys, you're supposed to have been switched on, because this is a shock that you guys have considered after 2-3 minutes. You don't want to concede quickly again. Obviously, both those goals are off a slip or a mistake at the back in key areas. And the idea of Mudiba abandoning Suarez, and Suarez has to be the guy who's striking Mahopa. I get Mahopa's not the fastest, not the most agile, but in that one instance, and in fact, the entire first half he was troubling Suarez on that right hand side, and you're like, Mudiba, where are you to double up at least on that particular side? So I think that was a tactic they got wrong. Number one. Number two, I think when you look at how both these teams played, maybe they should have switched with Mudau going further up front. And then you've got Mudiba coming back. I think that's how you change and switch those sides in terms of how it works best in terms of dealing with the threat. Goal number 2, Mudau again was sluggish in terms of tracking down Mfukeng for the second goal. You think to yourself, if Sundowns was switched on, Mudau was aware of the danger, because we kept saying to Mudau loves defending, and there was danger right there. You should have sniffed it out. You should have identified it and nullified it, but he didn't. Goal number 2. So props to Rele, because composure early on. He gets onto the cross by Mahopa. It was a great finish for the second goal. He didn't do much. There was an attacking threat, but the industry from the boy was great. And I think industry won Paris that match, because where Sundowns are very dangerous is through the middle. And industry nullified a lot of those threats. Makaula, you can talk about Talent Mbate as well. You can talk about the pressing from Mfukeng as well. Well, I mean, didn't do as much as we'd like. And for as long as Ribeiro says he trusts him, every time I see him, whether it's in person in the stadium or whether it's on the television, I don't quite see him in the center. As a 10, great. But sometimes you think to yourself, if there was another body there, we'd probably press better, probably have more space to play in. But maybe it worked out in the end because Pirates came away as winners there. Jay, with Sundowns, what was very, very intriguing is the fact that neither one of the trio in midfield played a 10 role, or maybe even advanced beyond their general positions. Because I think maybe you've got players who are too similar, and generally it's not a problem. But when you've got Tebogo Mokoena, you've got Adams, and you've got Allende, and they all seem to be at the 8 role. You're like, okay, it's 6, you don't quite need it because you guys have control of the possession, especially in the second half. Someone go be an extra body, be a fourth body. And I think they didn't recognize that, which I think was something that hurt them. Number 2, you've got the ball over the top where you can directly go and hurt Okoki or CBS and force them to run, but they never did. Instead, they tried to penetrate on the sides. Van Rooyen was okay enough in the game because I don't think he tracked the player well enough, but when the ball did come onto his side, he'd double up no Makaul or double up with Tentembat. On the other side, there was no getting past Mbokas as much, unless we speak about the 2 moments of magic where we returned on a dime on the edge of the box, but those chances were not created because quickly was closed down yet again. So Sundowns had possession, but Sundowns didn't create chances, which is very curious because Sundowns score goals. Sundowns have got the record number of goals when you look at their campaign thus far in the season. When you look at the exploits in the cup competitions as well, they score 4. They scored 4 consecutive games, and so when they get to FNB, you ask yourself, where were you guys creating chances? Because I think except for the header was that in the first half, because that header hit the crossbar. Apart from that, there was no shot on goal in the entirety of the first half. It's only in the second half that they came out to play a bit more and were a bit more aggressive. So I'm a bit puzzled in terms of how they read that game. Not just the coach, but the players themselves in terms of guys that send bodies up front because we need one. Especially after, fine. China had those tactics of delaying and trying to break the momentum because Sundowns pulled one back, which is something I don't like, by the way. Like, if we're a team that's going to win.
That helped the Pirates.
It probably did, Jay, but I see that week in, week out. Whether we're winning, whether we're losing, it's like China, their opportunities to kill the game and ice it. Scored a 3. Nkota came on and he had fresh legs and he's got pace to burn. But he's on the floor, rolling around. You're like, if only he played that ball. Because when he does then play the ball, avoiding a yellow card at the very last minute, it doesn't even clear the center line. So you're like, all that dilly-dallying for what? So I'm not a fan of that. Like, it's the same trait that I see in Tumile Nkune where I'm like, dude, just play. You're good enough to save balls. The team is good enough to deal with the threat. Just play. But all in all, Jay, I think I was happy with the outing as a Pirates fan. The 2 early goals, it was a dream start. And if anything, I was worried about the fact that sometimes when Pirates get ahead in games, they tend to relax. They tend to play and dilly-dally the ball and take unnecessary risks at the back, and therefore they're punished. And the team pulls the goal back, and it's a bit closer than it's supposed to be. I think, case in point, SuperSport United game, fine, there's the error by China, but the game's supposed to be wrapped up, but SuperSport get that late equalizer. The game goes to penalties. But with this one, I think we played very well the entire time in terms of how we defended. The goal by Suarez, great. Sorry, the goal by Mdao. I think it was a foul by Okoki on Suarez, and the players froze for a minute there. Sundowns continued. The pass gets to Suarez, and he scores to Mdao. I keep saying Suarez goes to Mdao, and well composed in terms of that finish. And I asked myself, where was that finish in the AFCON? But nonetheless, Jay, I think
it's funny. I actually thought the same thing.
Because that was very skilled.
You look at you in the box and scoring. That is exactly what the country needed from you in that game against Nigeria. But alas,
yeah, I think it's game on in terms of we can make a fight of it. But I think the league is gone. If I'm honest, those 2 results against Garants and against Stelis, that hurt us.
Yeah, we'll see, Chuck. I agree with you in terms of if Pirates can manage to come back in this one, it will be miraculous. They do have 4 games in hand. If they do manage to win all of them, then they are suddenly 3 points behind Sundowns, right? And hoping Sundowns can drop points somewhere along the line. But it does still look like a very tough mountain to climb. But kudos to Orlando Pirates for coming through with a game plan and executing on the game plan and winning that match against Sundowns. As I mentioned, the first time since 2020 they break that long run against Mamelodi Sundowns and not beating them in the league.